are wider questions about curriculum. The Curriculum for Excellence, which is Scotland's national curriculum, it is seen as putting more of an emphasis on skills and less on top-down and prescriptive methods of teaching. In England, meanwhile, a review of curriculum and assessment, something that was in the Labour manifesto, is beginning. We're joined by James McEnaney, who writes about education for the Herald newspaper and is a former teacher and lecturer, and also Tom Bennett, who is the behaviour czar for the UK government and director of the think tank Research Ed, or Research ED. Tom, I don't know how you say it.
Research Ed? I'll go with Research Ed, that's great.
Okay. Well, let me start with you and what you think. How different is the curriculum in the two countries?
Well, I mean, the Curriculum for Excellence is a great example of what not to do. When people ask, what should we do in a curriculum, I usually point to it, the Curriculum for Excellence, and say, just don't do that, do the opposite. And the reason why it's so different is that instead of emphasising subjects, it emphasises what's described as capacities, which are these incredibly vague categories of the types of things we'd like students to be able to do. The problem with this is it leads to inquiry learning, and subjects exist for a reason, because they're coherent and they're much more straightforward and consistent and easier to teach. But when you try to teach in this kind of cross-curricular thematic way, focusing on skills, what you end up with is an incredibly vague curriculum, which is incredibly hard to teach, which teachers really, really struggle with. And then when it gets to the point where students have to enter formal exams at the end of their school careers, there's this enormous steep incline of what students have to learn. And no wonder we see this drop-off. And sadly, Scotland's results and outcomes for children have been dropping for about 20 years.
Let me turn to James then, because I think, James, as a former teacher, you've worked with the Curriculum for Excellence, right? You've taught it. Is it as bad as Tom Bennett says?
No, no, it's not. There are major problems with Curriculum for Excellence. It's not really true to say that, it doesn't have subjects, for example, or that's not the way it's organised or taught. There's clear division across all the subjects. I was an English teacher and I taught English, for example. But there are big problems in terms of the design of the curriculum. It is at points too vague, at other points too prescriptive. It is true to say, based on these four capacities, that isn't in and of itself a major problem. That's the kind of philosophy that underpins it. And actually, interestingly, a recent review by the OECD suggested that part of the problem in Scottish education has been a failure to carry the sort of some of that philosophy from Curriculum for Excellence at the kind of earlier stages into what we call the senior phase, which is when young people sit exams. But it is certainly the case that there are issues with the way in which the things we expect kids to know are specified. So we've got the curriculum's broken up into these things called experiences and outcomes. And within them are, in theory, the things that young people are going to do and what they're going to learn out of it. And they sort of include the things we expect them to know, but it isn't really specified very clearly. And as I say, in some areas, that's not a massive problem. But in others, the lack of that specificity and the lack of sequencing of that knowledge that we expect from young people is a bit of a problem in
certain
terms of
subjects.
Teachers.
In certain subjects, you mean?
It's more of a problem in some subjects than others. The underpinning issue with it all is that Curriculum for Excellence expects teachers to be not just, technicians delivering a curriculum, but professionals who are developing that curriculum as well. And that's made more difficult by some of the design features of the curriculum, and it's also then made incredibly difficult by the fact that Scottish teachers have very low levels of non-contact time. So the time to actually make a system like that function has never really been available to teachers.
Tom Bennett, the broad principle, if we can sum it up as an emphasis on skills and capacity rather than the learning of facts, isn't that perhaps more in line with where the world is going in an age of chat GPT and the way that young people are absorbing information?
Oh God, I hope not. Simply because if teachers don't know what they should be teaching and students don't know what they should be learning, then you're going to get this vague mash, which creates the kind of chaos that we see in the outcomes for children. There needs to, Curriculum for Excellence, it's not a curriculum and it's not excellence. I don't know where the word for is going there. But I don't think it's anything to do with capacity. Students have always needed knowledge-rich curriculums in order to navigate and explore their own lives and the world in which they live. And that can't be solved or equated to vague skills which don't really mean anything.
Right, but there must have been times when you think, God, you don't want a curriculum that's too prescriptive. You want teachers to be able to energise and enthuse and inspire their students and to take knowledge in different directions.
Well, the best way to energise and enthuse students is by making them feel competent and confident in the subject itself. And the subjects that we teach students have got long established taxonomies of domain-specific knowledge, which then leads to skills. Knowledge and skills aren't separate. Skills are composed of the knowledge that makes you competent in order to be good at the subject itself. And if you want people to be critical thinkers, for example, it's absolutely vital that they have masses and masses of knowledge about the subject in which you're asking them to be competent and critical. So there's no separation here. It's not just about learning lists of facts. Understanding the knowledge of each different subject is the way in which you build up these skills and capacities. Okay. And avoiding that and putting the cart before the horse is how you destroy it.
Let me just get a quick final thought from James. Which are the subjects which you think the Scottish Government should focus on improving this curriculum on?
The entire curriculum needs to be addressed in terms of how it's designed and how it's constructed at a low level. If the question is more about are there some areas where there's greater pressure to address the balance between, say, knowledge and skills and the different kinds of knowledge as well, because there's quite a big discussion to be had there. You tend to hear more complaints about that from maths teachers, science teachers, that sort of area than you maybe do from people who maybe taught math previous subjects, taught English. But in terms of what's up with the curriculum, it's a much broader issue than just something as simplistic as there's not enough knowledge or something like that.